For as long as memory stretches, Mount Shasta has stood not only as a towering natural monument, but as something far stranger, an enigma cloaked in silence. Some say it is a gateway to another world, where lights shimmer without a source, where shadows drift without leaving a trace. A place where questions meet only stillness, and secrets answer in whispers you can't quite hear. In the vast forested wilderness of Northern California, the mountain rises alone, its snow-capped peak breaking the sky like a vision from another realm. Here, stories linger in the silence. Rituals are said to unfold beneath moonlight, eyes sometimes glinting from behind trees, belonging to no one ever listed in census records. And deep beneath the surface, a city crafted not from stone but from radiant light is rumored to pulse with life. This is Mount Shasta, and this is its legend. Before we descend into the heart of today's mystery, take a moment to like and subscribe. You never know, the next truth you hear might change how you see the world. There are mountains that rise as mere topographic features, symbols on a map, no more. And then there are those mountains that carry weight, not geological, but mythological. Mount Shasta is one of the rare few. Its solitary rise from the lush valley below gives it an imposing aura, as though it had been placed there deliberately by forces beyond comprehension. With an elevation surpassing 14,000 feet, or just over 4,300 meters, Shasta pierces the clouds unaccompanied by neighboring peaks, creating a surreal silhouette, a sentinel watching over something unseen. Its sheer size and isolation produce an almost sacred silence, a feeling described by many as not simply awe, but reverence. On clear days, the mountain can be seen from nearly 140 miles away, its form becoming an icon for those who've ever wondered what lies beyond the known. Over the centuries, Mount Shasta has been an inspiration to artists, poets, dreamers, and also to seekers of the mystical. Indigenous tribes such as the Wintu, the Modoc, and the Shasta have long considered this mountain to be holy. To them, it is more than a peak, it is a living being, home to spirits, ancestral guides, and entities that dwell beyond the human veil. This reverence, passed down through generations, has crystallized into belief. A belief that Shasta is one of the great spiritual epicenters of North America. But among the myriad of legends that echo through the pines and snow, one stands apart. It does not come solely from tribal memory or oral tradition. It has found its way into books, meditations, and modern mysticism. It is the story of a hidden city, Telos, and of a race of ancient beings said to dwell within the mountain, the Lemurians. Who were the Lemurians, and why does their name stir something in those who hear it for the first time? According to legend, the Lemurians were the surviving elite of a civilization known as Lemuria, an advanced society believed to have flourished long before recorded history. While the tale of Atlantis is popularized by ancient Greek writings, Lemuria emerged from a different current of thought, first hypothesized in the 19th century by biologists attempting to explain anomalies in fossil records, and later embraced by mystics who expanded the theory into something far more esoteric. In one version of the story, Lemuria was not just a continent, it was a spiritual beacon, home to a race that had mastered the balance between inner harmony and technological wonder. When a cataclysm struck, whether by water, fire, or tectonic collapse, a few enlightened survivors escaped. Led by intuition or divine guidance, they chose a solitary mountain in what is now Northern California. There, they are said to have carved out a refuge deep beneath the rock, a sanctuary of light, wisdom, and eternal memory. They named it Telos, and Telos, the city beneath the mountain, became their hidden Eden. Descriptions of the Lemurians vary, yet certain images recur with eerie consistency. They are said to be tall, often over 7 feet, with luminous white skin and radiant, flowing hair that glistens with an unnatural sheen. Their presence is described as both serene and electric, like encountering a being suspended between dimensions. Their necks are long and elegant, adorned with gemstone-studded collars that sparkle like miniature suns. Robes of white fabric float about them as if stirred by winds from another world. But it is not their appearance alone that captures the imagination. It is what they are believed to possess. Technology far beyond our time. The Lemurians, according to legend, are not merely advanced, they are transcendent. Their mastery includes forms of energy unknown to science, gravity manipulation, electromagnetism, and possibly even the bending of time itself. Their ships, described as cigar-shaped crafts of gleaming silver, are said to rise vertically from the earth and vanish into sky, leaving behind no sound, no trail. Inside Telos, the technology merges with architecture in ways that seem more like poetry than engineering. Stories tell of vast crystalline halls, lit by energy fields that hum rather than shine, where gold and silver are not currency, but raw materials for spiritual expression. Every wall is said to be etched with symbols. Some call them codes, meant not for the eye, but for the soul. Some claim that the Lemurians did not abandon spiritual growth for technology. Instead, they fused the two. That they meditate using energy grids beneath the earth, that they heal not with medicine, but with vibration and light. And most mysteriously of all, they are said to possess what we might call the third eye, a spiritual organ capable of reading thoughts, shifting objects, and even stepping out of visible reality itself. The Lemurians are more than an ancient people. They are, in many versions of the myth, the embodiment of humanity's highest potential, a reflection of what we might become if wisdom surpassed ambition. This myth may have remained a whispered tale passed among spiritual seekers, if not for one young man and one very strange summer. In 1883, a teenager named Frederick Spencer Oliver was helping his family mark mining claims at the foot of Mount Shasta. It was a simple job drive in wooden stakes, record their positions. But something happened, something inexplicable. While holding a pen in his hand, Oliver felt his arm begin to tremble violently. Against his will, it began to write. Words flowed from his hand. Strange, unfamiliar words he claimed not to understand. Frightened, he ran home. But the writing did not stop. Over the days and weeks that followed, his hand would take over again and again, scribbling entire pages of mysterious text. Without his conscious input, this phenomenon, known in occult literature as automatic writing, soon became the channel through which a book began to emerge. Years passed, and by 1895, the manuscript was complete. Oliver called it A Dweller on Two Planets. But he insisted it was not his book. It had been transmitted, he claimed, by a being, a Lemurian who lived beneath Mount Shasta. The book was extraordinary for its time. It described, in vivid and often poetic detail, the hidden city of Telos. Corridors illuminated by crystals, walls that opened without hinges, rooms plated in gold, and carpets softer than anything that could exist in the material world. There were flying ships, cigar-shaped vessels that hovered with the ease of breath, and a transportation system that bore uncanny resemblance to modern magnetic levitation. And this was the 19th century. Quantum theory had not yet been formalized. Electromagnetic propulsion was not even in the vocabulary. Yet here was a manuscript, reportedly written through spiritual channeling, describing concepts that felt like echoes from a future not yet born. Oliver died in 1899 at the age of just 33. But his mother ensured his work was not lost. In 1905, A Dweller on Two Planets was finally published. And it quietly ignited something deep within the spiritual communities of the time. To skeptics, it was fantasy. But to mystics, to seekers, to those already attuned to the whisper of things beyond the veil, it was more than a book. It was a revelation, a message from the mountain itself, and perhaps from the beings who still dwell within. The publication of A Dweller on Two Planets in 1905 did more than stir curiosity. It laid the groundwork for a new mythology, one that did not simply echo ancient tales, but reimagined the very nature of spiritual evolution. Among esoteric thinkers, Oliver's work was seen not as fiction, but as disclosure, a coded message delivered through a young man who, perhaps unwittingly, had become a bridge between worlds. But Oliver was only the beginning. Decades later, another figure would arrive on the scene, someone who would take the legends further, threading them into a broader mystical framework. His name was Harvey Spencer Lewis. In 1931, Lewis, a well-known occultist and the founder of the Rosicrucian Order, AMORC in America, published a book under the pseudonym Wishar Spenley Serve, written under a different name. Its origins were unmistakably tied to his vision of spiritual science, and within its pages, the legend of the Lemurians was expanded. Lewis did not just echo Oliver's tale of a lost city beneath Mount Shasta. He connected Telos to a vast metaphysical system, one that spanned continents, timelines, and civilizations. Atlantis, Egypt, Tibet, the Himalayas. He linked them all through secret knowledge and energy lines that converged at key sacred sites across the planet. Mount Shasta, in his view, was not just a mystical anomaly, it was a power node, a nexus point, where interdimensional energies collided. To Lewis and his followers, the Lemurians were more than an ancient race. They were guardians keepers of forgotten wisdom. And Mount Shasta was their temple. His teachings helped crystallize the idea that Shasta was not just a physical location, it was a portal. A place where time and space folded, where the veil between dimensions thinned. A place where, under the right conditions, with the right mind and heart, you might just find yourself standing face to face with something that was not supposed to exist. As the 20th century progressed, the legends grew. Between the 1950s and 1980s, waves of metaphysical seekers began migrating toward Mount Shasta. They were not driven by fame or fortune, but by intuition, an inner pull they could not quite explain. Meditation groups, New Age communes, and esoteric societies began forming around the base of the mountain. They came with crystals, chants, and quiet determination, seeking connection with whatever presence they believed lingered within the peak. Some trekked deep into the forests, searching for hidden doorways. Others meditated for hours in silence, hoping to receive visions or voices. And while not everyone found what they were looking for, many returned with stories, fragments of experience that, while unverifiable, carried a strange consistency. One recurring tale involved sightings of tall, robed figures with long white hair and glowing eyes moving silently through the trees. Witnesses described them not as ghostly, but as intensely alive. Their presence brought not fear, but a strange calm, a sense of being watched by something ancient and kind. Others claimed to receive dreams so vivid they defied ordinary explanation, dreams of luminous cities, crystal halls, and telepathic beings who spoke without words. Some said they were healed simply by being near the mountain. Others swore they received ideas complex, structured, and unfamiliar from nowhere. Among those who made the pilgrimage to Shasta, it was widely believed that the Lemurians no longer communicated through speech, but through frequencies, waves of intuition and symbolic language. They did not interrupt human affairs often. But when they did, it was quiet and compassionate. Many dismissed these stories as fantasy, the colorful imaginings of dreamers. But what made the mystery difficult to ignore was how often the accounts aligned, how people who had never met, from different parts of the country or even the world, described nearly identical experiences. And then, of course, there were the lights. Glowing orbs, pulsating beams, radiant flashes across the tree line, strange illuminations that defied weather, explanation, or logic. Some came at dawn, others at twilight. Most vanished before cameras could capture them. But a few were witnessed by groups too many eyes to be mistaken. One of the earliest documented incidents appeared in the Los Angeles Times on May 22, 1932. A man named Edward Lancer was aboard a train traveling through the Shasta region when he saw something that stayed with him for the rest of his life. As the train passed near the mountain's southern slope, Lancer witnessed a sudden eruption of light, brilliant, golden, and pulsing from the base of the mountain. Several passengers saw it too. When Lancer asked the conductor about it, the reply was chilling in its casual certainty. "You saw it yourself. The Lemurians are performing their ritual." Disturbed and intrigued, Lancer returned to the area weeks later, conducting his own amateur investigation. He spoke to ranchers, travelers, and locals living near the forest's edge. What he found only deepened the mystery. According to many, the Lemurians were not just myth, they were real, living somewhere within the mountain. Locals told stories of tall strangers appearing in nearby towns, purchasing strange items like sulfur, salt, and pig fat, always paying with chunks of raw gold. When asked about their origins, they would say little, only smile. And then they would vanish. Some believed the light Lancer had seen was not natural but ceremonial, a beacon perhaps, or an offering, a ritual meant to honor Lemuria, the continent they would lost to the sea. But Lancer was not the only one to glimpse something inexplicable. In June 1940, the Stockton Record published another strange account, this time from a man named Professor Edward Larkin of the Mount Lowe Observatory. While calibrating his telescope, Larkin claimed he saw something extraordinary: a marble temple, white and immense, perched on Mount Shasta's slope. Its architecture, he said, rivaled anything found in ancient Yucatan or even classical Greece. Towers of perfect symmetry, domes of polished stone, a beauty that felt divine, but when Larkin tried to relocate the structure, it was gone. No trace, no path, nothing. Some dismissed it as illusion or heat distortion. But the details Larkin provided, the symmetry, the materials, even the placement of columns, matched descriptions found in Oliver's A Dweller on Two Planets, written nearly half a century earlier. Coincidence? Maybe. But for many, it was more than that. It was a puzzle piece. Another signal that perhaps, just perhaps, the stories were not as fictional as they seemed. There is one story, in particular, that refuses to fade. It is known simply as The Woman at Panther Springs. In the summer of 1970, a small group of campers were relaxing beside the Panther Springs Creek, enjoying the quiet hush of early morning. The air was still, the water moved softly over stones, and then they saw her, a tall woman, barefoot, draped in a white robe, stepped silently from the forest. She had long golden hair that fell past her waist. Without a word, she walked into the icy stream. The water came to her knees, then her waist. She closed her eyes and stood motionless in the freezing flow for nearly 5 full minutes. Then, without hesitation, she turned and walked back into the woods. No one followed. No one dared speak. She was never seen again. Perhaps the strangest stories are the ones that suggest the Lemurians sometimes intervene subtly in human affairs. There is the tale of the farmer on Shasta's eastern slope, whose land had gone dry and cracked. One evening, a tall man in a robe appeared beside his fence. The man spoke softly, offering a method of irrigation the farmer had never heard of, something involving mineral activation and soil vibration. Desperate, the farmer tried it. Within weeks, his crops began to thrive again. He never saw the man again. Another account tells of a family stranded in a snowstorm after their car broke down on a remote road. As night fell and panic set in, a figure emerged from the trees, a man with calm eyes and frost clinging to his robe. He said nothing. He simply walked to the hood, made a few adjustments, and stepped away. The car started instantly. He vanished into the woods. The family never found his tracks. Among all those who have searched for the city of Telos, one name keeps surfacing: Dr. Doriel. An esoteric researcher, Doriel claimed to have found a cavern deep within the mountain, vast, warm, and glowing, with a kind of artificial sunlight. He described walls etched with symbols, floors inlaid with gemstones, and ceilings so high they seemed to echo with a breath not his own. He saw no people, but he said he felt watched, not with fear, but with permission, as if he had been allowed in but not invited to stay. Not all stories are told aloud. Some drift quietly between worlds, surfacing only when someone listens hard enough. And Mount Shasta, if you believe the whispers, is not just a place where old tales are remembered, but where they are still unfolding. One of the most haunting and enduring of those tales is the legend of J.C. Brown. In 1904, Brown was working as a geologist for a British mining company surveying for gold deposits in the Shasta region. During one of his explorations on the western slope of the mountain, he stumbled upon what he first assumed was a natural fissure. But as he investigated further, he found something astonishing: a tunnel, and not a crude animal-made passage or an abandoned mine shaft. This was deliberate, carved with purpose. Brown followed the tunnel for miles, moving deeper into the earth. What he found defied logic. He emerged into vast chambers, intricately built. The walls shimmered with copper panels. Crystals glowed with an ambient light that had no visible source. Towering stone statues lined the halls, figures of beings unlike any described in traditional archaeology. And then he found the crypt. Dozens, possibly hundreds of mummified figures, many between 6 and 10 feet tall, rested there. Some wore ceremonial robes. Others bore what he described as metallic armor, in gold and bronze. They did not match any culture known to the Americas. No tribe, no civilization. Nothing in the anthropological record came close. Brown was shaken but exhilarated. He documented everything, maps, sketches, notes, and left the mountain to organize a formal expedition. He kept the secret for 30 years. In 1934, Brown finally revealed what he had found. He gathered a team of 80 individuals, historians, explorers, journalists, to return with him to the site. The night before their departure, spirits were high. Questions buzzed. Anticipation filled the room. But the next morning, J.C. Brown was gone. Vanished. He left no note, no trace, no explanation. The expedition never launched, and the location of the tunnel, if it ever truly existed, was lost. To this day, Brown's disappearance remains one of the strangest unsolved episodes in California folklore. Some believe he fled, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he had found. Others suspect foul play. A few believe the Lemurians intervened, sealing their secret, removing the messenger. Whatever the truth, the cave of J.C. Brown has become legend within legend, and it is said that even now, hikers occasionally stumble upon strange openings in the rock. They return days later to find the entrances gone. There is something strange about the stories surrounding Mount Shasta, not simply in their content, but in their consistency. Across time, cultures, and languages, people return again and again with near-identical visions of glowing cities, tall-robed figures, subterranean tunnels, and moments of healing or revelation that defy logic. It would be easy to write them off. But the sheer volume and depth of the stories make dismissal harder than belief. One anonymous account from the 1960s tells of a man who collapsed during a solo hike. When he awoke, he was no longer lying in the dirt, but on a smooth stone floor that shimmered with gold. Above him, the ceiling was studded with crystals that sparkled like distant stars. A man stood nearby, tall, silent, radiating warmth. "You are safe," he reportedly said. "You were not meant to leave yet." The hiker fainted again. When he awoke a second time, he was back beside the trail where he had fallen, with no wound, no exhaustion, and no memory of the hours in between. Perhaps that is the real key to these stories. They exist in the in-between, between wake and sleep, between known and unknown, between silence and revelation. And in that threshold, Mount Shasta lives. For many who believe in the existence of Telos and the Lemurians, the mountain is not just a physical landmark. It is a vibrational threshold, a tuning fork of the earth, resonating on a frequency only accessible to those whose hearts or minds are ready. There is a reason spiritual seekers feel drawn to its slopes. Some say it is the energy grid, an alignment of ley lines or planetary meridians that converge beneath the peak. Others claim the mountain acts as a natural amplifier, enhancing psychic awareness and thinning the barrier between realms. Modern channelers have described entire downloads of information coming during meditation on the mountain. Complex insights about interdimensional travel, ancient Earth histories, and the evolution of consciousness itself. They say the Lemurians are not hiding, they are waiting. Not in secrecy, but in stillness. One recurring motif in many channeled writings is that Telos is not a city in the traditional sense, but a multidimensional space. To perceive it, one must be in resonance with it vibrationally, attuned. It is why, perhaps, only some can see its doors. Why its presence shifts like mist there one moment, gone the next. According to these narratives, Telos is not buried underground in the way we imagine it is layered between frequencies. Its structures exist, but not entirely within our 3D framework. Instead, they shimmer along the edge of human perception, occasionally bleeding through in dreams, visions, or spontaneous encounters. Another curious feature of the legend is the emphasis on service. In many retellings, the Lemurians are described not as watchers or rulers, but as stewards, caretakers of the planet's energy, assisting in humanity's spiritual evolution from a distance. They are said to help, quietly, when needed, to heal not just physically, but emotionally, guiding individuals toward realization, remembrance, or renewal. One woman claimed that while camping alone near the mountain, she was overcome with grief. She had recently lost her son and came to Shasta seeking peace. In the stillness of night, she said a tall woman in white appeared in her dream, cradling a light in her hands. "You are not alone," the figure whispered. "He is with us. He shines now." The woman woke up with tears on her cheeks and an inexplicable feeling of closure. Skeptics will point out that there is no physical evidence of Telos. No ruins, no bones, no technology. They will remind us that memories are fallible and dreams cannot be measured. But that is the paradox of legend. It endures not because it is proven, but because it resonates. And Mount Shasta, more than perhaps any other mountain in North America, continues to resonate quietly, calling to those with open hearts and curious minds. Whether Telos is real in the material sense or exists only in some higher dimensional framework, the result is the same. People keep searching, and sometimes they return with stories too strange, too luminous, and too consistent to dismiss outright. As we move deeper into the mystery, one thing becomes clear. The legend of the Lemurians is not fading. In fact, it is growing, shifting into the digital age, inspiring films, documentaries, and spiritual retreats. Podcasts dissect the symbolism. Artists render glowing interpretations. Writers weave modern fables from ancient myths. And yet the core remains unchanged. Mount Shasta, the city of Telos, the tall beings in white, the rituals at twilight, the knowledge waiting in silence. Whether you see them as metaphor or memory, the symbols continue to speak. They remind us of something we have long forgotten, that maybe, just maybe, wonder never left the world. We simply stopped looking for it. There are places on Earth where the air seems charged, where silence hums with meaning, and where time feels ever so slightly bent. Mount Shasta is one of those places, but perhaps what gives it this strange gravity is not just the towering peak or the untouched wilderness. It is the steady stream of experiences that defy the limits of ordinary life. And among those stories, one stands out not for its grandeur, but for its intimacy. It was the late autumn of 1985. A hiker named Robert was trekking the southern trail of Shasta just after sunrise. He had no expectations, no spiritual ambitions, just a man seeking solitude in nature. That morning, frost clung to the low brush. The sky was a clean sweep of pale blue, and for hours, Robert walked in silence. Around midday, as he crossed a rocky clearing, he noticed something odd. A patch of warmth. He paused. The air in that spot was inexplicably different. It vibrated like the faint tension in the air before a storm, but not threatening. Just alert. Then, he heard a voice, not spoken aloud, but inside his head. "You have come far." "But do you know why?" Startled, Robert spun around. No one was there. Then the light shifted. A shimmer barely perceptible rose from the earth like steam. In its center stood a figure, tall and cloaked in something between light and fabric. The face was indistinct, soft, but kind. Robert fell to his knees. Not out of fear, but awe. The being stepped forward, touched Robert's forehead with 2 fingers, and in that moment, he said his mind filled with symbols, images, and a deep, immeasurable peace. He blacked out. When he awoke, it was dark. Stars blinked overhead. The spot where the figure had stood was cold again. No sign of heat, shimmer, or voice. But something had changed. Robert returned home and began having dreams detailed. Lucid dreams of underground temples, glowing symbols, floating orbs, and books that turned their own pages. In waking life, he found he could finish people's sentences. Sometimes, he just knew things. Not everything. Just enough to know he had not imagined it. Stories like Robert's are scattered across the decades like breadcrumbs. Many remain private, too personal, too sacred to share. Others surface slowly, passed along in quiet conversations, written into journals, or whispered at retreats beneath the stars. They do not seek proof. They seek resonance. Among those who claim to have experienced the presence of the Lemurians, there are a few recurring elements, patterns that repeat like cosmic signatures. First, there is always a sense of time distortion. Hours lost in minutes. A sunset that hangs in place. A dream that seems to last years but occurs in the space of a nap. Second, there is the appearance of symbols, often geometric triangles, spirals, radiant spheres, and often glowing, appearing in the mind's eye or in meditative states. Some claim these symbols are keys, meant to unlock memories buried deep within human consciousness. Third, there is the presence of soundless communication. Voices in the head, yes, but more than that. Feelings that carry information, images that feel like entire paragraphs of meaning, a transmission not of words, but of essence. And fourth, and perhaps most important, is the emotion. Those who encounter what they believe to be Lemurians speak of an overwhelming sense of peace, of being known, of being loved in a way that dissolves fear. A lesser-known story came from a man named Aaron in 1997. He had been working through a personal crisis and decided to spend a week hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, which runs along Mount Shasta's eastern ridge. On his third night, Aaron camped in a small forest clearing. That evening, the temperature dropped sharply. He lit a fire and huddled in his tent. Just past midnight, a flicker of movement caught his eye. A tall figure, not threatening, just standing at the edge of the trees. Aaron stepped out of his tent and stood still. The figure raised an arm, not waving, not beckoning, just a calm gesture of acknowledgement. Aaron took a step forward, and then the figure turned, stepped behind a tree, and vanished. The next morning, Aaron found a small crystal in the exact spot where the figure had stood. He had not brought it. He did not know what type it was. He keeps it on his desk to this day. He calls it the reminder. One of the enduring mysteries is this: if Telos is real, why does not it reveal itself fully? If these beings are benevolent, enlightened, and technologically advanced, why the secrecy? The answer, offered by many spiritual traditions, is that such contact is governed not by our curiosity, but by our consciousness. In other words, we are not hidden from Telos. It is hidden from us, not out of malice, but mercy. To enter Telos, whether physically, energetically, or spiritually, is to step into a frequency of deep coherence, balance, and truth. And if we are out of alignment, the city will not open. Like a password that only responds to the vibration of peace, the stories say Telos is not found through digging or maps, it is found through resonance, through readiness. There is, however, a growing belief that the age of separation is ending. Channelers, mystics, and even a few quantum theorists suggest that Earth is undergoing a shift, a rise in vibrational frequency that is subtly altering the fabric of reality. Some call it the Great Awakening. Others refer to it as ascension. In either case, the belief is the same, that barriers between dimensions are thinning, that those who were once hidden may soon walk among us not as saviors but as mirrors, to show us what we forgot, to remind us who we really are. There are whispers that in the near future, a mass sighting will occur on the mountain, that a doorway will open not to everyone, but to those whose hearts are attuned like ancient instruments, ready to play the frequency of home. No government will announce it, no headline will capture it, but those who feel it will know. It will not be loud, it will be sacred. And so, the question remains, is Telos a myth, a dream, a memory from another lifetime? Or is it a real city, humming beneath the earth, waiting with quiet dignity for the world above to remember it exists? Whatever your answer, Mount Shasta does not demand belief. It simply waits, still, towering, unmoving, like a great white sentinel of forgotten truths. As you listen to these stories, consider this. If even one of them is true, if even one hiker, one seeker, one grieving mother really stood in the presence of something otherworldly, what does that mean for the rest of us? Not just about Mount Shasta, but about everything. In every civilization, stories emerge that seem too impossible to be real, yet too persistent to be ignored. They speak of lost continents, of beings who glow from within, of cities beneath mountains and knowledge carried not through books, but vibration. These are not merely tales of the past, they are invitations, and Mount Shasta, with all its silence, stands like an open door to that invitation, an ancient question carved into the earth itself. Will we remember what we have forgotten? For those who walk the spiritual path, Shasta is more than a mountain, it is a mirror, a sacred landscape where the veil is thin and the soul feels closer to its origin. Hikers speak of being overcome with emotion for no reason, of hearing music in the wind, of dreams that begin before sleep. The energy, they say, is palpable. Some say this feeling comes from the mountain's geology. It is formed from layers of volcanic rock rich in magnetite and quartz materials that amplify electromagnetic fields. Others suggest that beneath the soil lies a massive crystal bed, generating subtle frequencies that interact with the human nervous system. But those who believe in Telos see these physical attributes as the outer shell of something far more profound, a spiritual technology embedded into the mountain, a kind of living portal, alive with intention. There is one final story that threads through nearly every version of the Mount Shasta mythos. It is not dramatic or full of spectacle. In fact, it is stunningly simple. It is the story of the return. According to many channeled texts, Lemuria was not simply a lost continent. It was Earth's original sacred civilization, a time when spirit and science danced in harmony, when nature was not a resource, but a relative, when life was lived in resonance with the stars. When Lemuria fell, some say it was not just land that was lost, but memory. The Lemurians who survived those who retreated beneath Mount Shasta chose to wait, not in fear, but in patience, until the surface world was once again ready to remember who it had once been. And now, in this present moment, our moment, many believe that time is near. The signs, they say, are everywhere. Children born with inexplicable knowledge, a mass return to intuition and energy healing, a hunger for ancient wisdom, a collapse of systems built on imbalance. These are not random, they are symptoms of awakening. In this vision of the world, the Lemurians are not superior, they are older siblings. Guardians, not here to rule or convert, but to remind, to show us what it looks like to live in balance with each other and the planet, to walk with reverence, to speak with light. And what about you? Have you ever dreamed of a city filled with glowing corridors and silent wisdom? Have you ever stood on a mountain trail and felt, even for a heartbeat, that you were not alone? These moments, brief, strange, unforgettable, are how the legend lives, not through belief, but through experience. In the end, the story of Mount Shasta and the Lemurians is not meant to be solved like a puzzle. It is not a question of true or false. It is a mythic lens through which to view our reality more deeply, more curiously. Whether you believe the tales or see them as metaphors, the message remains. There is more to this world than we have been taught. There is more to you than you have been told. So next time you see a snow-capped peak shimmering against the sky, or feel a pull to wander somewhere you have never been, ask yourself, what if it is not just a place? What if it is a memory? What if the door to Telos is not beneath the mountain, but inside you? Thank you for taking this journey. If this story stirred something in you, if it made you pause, wonder, or remember, then it has done its job. You do not have to believe it. You only have to feel the invitation to look at the world again, not as something explained, but as something waiting to be discovered. And somewhere, far beneath the mountain's eternal watch, a city of light still breathes, waiting. If you enjoyed this story, share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe, like, and stay with us as we continue exploring the hidden truths, forgotten mysteries, and ancient legends that just might still be whispering beneath our feet. Until next time, keep your heart open, your mind clear, and your eyes on the horizon. We will see you in the next mystery.